everybody, it's Emily at Arg Schooling, and let's chat about what I read in November. This is for the second half of the month. I already have a video, if you want to check that out, where I talk about what I read the first half of November. I read 7 books the second half of this month, and I read 8 books the first half of the month, so the whole month long I read 15 books. So not too bad. I feel pretty good about that. So let's just chat about what I read. So the first book I want to talk about is called Just Keep Walking, and this is by Erin Soderbergh Downing. This is a book I read for the Sybil Awards. It was nominated, so I was trying to hit as many of the books that haven't been read yet as I can. And because every book needs to be read by at least 2 people, so I'm just like looking through now to see what hasn't been read yet. I really enjoyed this one. This is a story about a girl who has been looking forward to doing this like ridiculously long hike. Her father is a hiker and took her older brother on this adventure when he was about her age, so she's been looking forward to this for years. It's this really long hike across, I think it's Lake Erie, but now I can't remember which of the Great Lakes it was. But it's like 100 miles is what she's aiming for. So it's like 2 weeks of hiking and camping. And her father has recently left and already in a relationship with this new family that he's like spending more time with them now than with her, and she's feeling very frustrated with that. And her mother, who is not a hiker, has offered to do the hike with her. And so they're doing this like really long, strenuous hike. They're not sure, either of them, that they really can do it, but she's determined that like this is a thing that she needs to prove to herself, that she doesn't need her dad, that she can just do this and prove that. I think she also, it's 100 miles, but I think her brother, when they did it, they only did 75, so she picked 100 miles to like one-up them. So the whole story is her like fighting through this hike that from like day one, she's like, okay, maybe I can't do this. And over the course of the story, she realizes that not only can she do it, but she has to do it, and she's going to make herself finish. And the story is a lot about like finding out that you can persevere through hard things, but also finding out that what you think was happening isn't necessarily what was actually happening. And like maybe her father isn't this horrible person that she had been visualizing him as, because the divorce came like completely out of left field for her. She did not see this coming at all, and she feels very abandoned and very angry about it. So like I thought this was really well done. What I absolutely loved about it though was when I got to the end of the book and I read the little author's note at the end, the author did the hike. Like she wanted it to be as authentic as possible. So she took her son, who was about the same age as Joe, the main character in the book, and they did the hike. They did the whole thing. I was like, wait a minute. Okay, that's really neat, because like I could never. So I thought this was really good. I really enjoyed the story, and I gave this 5 stars. Regina and I finished reading From Here to Eternity by Caitlin Doughty. Loved this. I did the audio because Caitlin Doughty reads it, and I just thought, like, I loved the audiobook for Smoke Gets in Your Eyes so much that I knew I was going to want to listen to this, and I'm so glad we did it that way. Like, I don't know, whenever an author reads their own book, especially when they have a really strong narrative voice, I just will definitely always want to listen to that. So this is really well done. This is a book about the way other cultures around the world view death, and like trying to shift our expectations, our perceptions of death, and how like in our culture we're very like far removed from it, so it often feels shocking and scary and upsetting, where in other cultures they have this very intimate relationship with death. And I just think that's really interesting. I love reading things like this. I mean this is part of our morbid curiosities unit on death, but I just think it's a really interesting concept, and I don't know, I'm fascinated with the way we look at death as a society, as a culture, and how we can work on shifting it to be less scary. So I thought this was really, really good. I gave it 5 stars. I finished reading The Indifferent Stars Above. I did read this with Regina, but she was getting frustrated with how long it was and how like overly descriptive. It was not a book that she was enjoying, so we ended up not finishing it. But I wanted to finish it because I'm working on writing the unit for the cannibalism section of Morbid Curiosities for Build Your Library. So I wanted to finish reading it so I could add it in for that. So even though technically we were reading that in like September and October, I finished it in November because I think we only made it like 3/4 of the way through before she was like, please can we not? So we ended up just watching some videos about the Donner Party to wrap up. But I love this book so much. I just think it's really well done. I understand her grievances with it and I'm not gonna fight about it, but like I still think it's an excellent book about the Donner Party, and like it really helps you to see like how something like that could have happened, and to like he uses a lot of like modern day scenarios to help us to like really understand why certain things happen the way they did, which I think is really helpful in like putting yourself into that place. I also really like that he follows one person's journey as opposed to like just telling it from like the like an academic position of these people did these things. I think it's interesting how he focuses just on Sarah Graves. I mean, he does talk about everyone, but like you're really there with Sarah and her experiences on this journey. So I just think this is a really great resource and I enjoy it. I gave it 5 stars. I read The Door is Open, Stories of Celebration and Community by 11 Desi Voices, and this is a short story collection, again, middle grade, that I read for the civils. I loved this book. This was so good. Okay, like one of the things that I really like, and I didn't know I liked this until I read Ancestor Approved, which is a similar kind of collection, where all of the short stories are about one specific place and they all kind of go together in a way. They're all different stories and they're not like, it's not like a novel, but all of the characters in these stories revolve around this one place. And so you see some overlap in each story. Like you might see a character that you just read about in a different story and this show up in this story. They're in this fictional town of Maple Grove in New Jersey, and all the stories revolve around the community center in this town where the South Asian community meets up and has different like activities and festivals and things. So you see like all these different characters that live in this town rallying around their community for various things, like different activities, a spelling bee, and like there's lots of different things happening. And I just thought it was excellent. I loved all of the stories. Like it's rare for me to read a short story collection where I enjoy every single story. And this is one of those rare cases where I thought every story was really well done. I listened to this on audio because that is the only way I could access it. And I thought it was really good. I was nervous because sometimes with books like this where like the names might be a little bit unusual, like I can't always hear what they're saying correctly, and I wished I could have it in front of me, but I had no issues at all with this book. Everything was really well done. All the voices were great. I thought it was so good. So I highly recommend, if you liked Ancestor Approved, which is like an indigenous author collection where everything's centered around this one powwow, if you liked that, then you would like this. So I highly recommend it. I gave it 5 stars. I had a really good reading month, guys. Then I read my 12 Recommendations from 12 Friends book that I was super nervous about, but not as nervous about the one I'm going to be reading in December. But I was still nervous about this one because it was so big. I read Black River Orchard by Chuck Wendig. And this took me a minute to get into. I think I was like a third of the way in when I've like fully connected to the story. But that first third was a little rough because there's so many characters and it just took me a minute to like calibrate and figure everyone out and put myself in a position where I was like, okay, I know who everybody is now and now I can like get the story. I don't know if I can explain this in a way that makes sense. This is a book about evil apples. Okay, hear me out. If you watched and enjoyed Midnight Mass by Mike Flanagan, this is a book you will like. It's very similar to that in that we're following this like small town, this tight-knit community, and you're following a bunch of different characters in the town, and one of them has power over everyone else, kind of, and it devolves into not quite, but almost a hive mind situation where everyone is becoming this like evil empire of people and like you have a couple outsiders who are trying to fight it. And it all revolves around apples. Apples. I learned way too much stuff about apples, like way more things than I ever thought I'd ever know. So it was really good though. I enjoyed it. Like it took me a minute to get into it, but once I was in it, I was there for the ride, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. So I gave this like 4.5 stars. I read Reaper Man with Regina. This was our read aloud for November. This is number 11 in the Discworld series, and it is, I think, the second death book, because I think Mort comes first, and after Mort is Reaper Man, I think. I might be getting that wrong. But I didn't want to read Mort with her because I just reread Mort earlier in the year, and I was like, you know, I don't really want to reread it again this year. So we moved on to Reaper Man, but I think when I do write the death unit, I think I'm going to swap for Mort, because I feel like Mort might fit a little bit better within the realm of what we're studying. Anyway, not that it really, it's a fun, silly book. But anyway, Reaper Man, I don't know if I can explain this one. Reaper Man is about Death finding out that he's going to die. And he kind of decides that he's not going to do this anymore. He's going to just step down and go live out the rest of his days as a person. And he like names himself Bill Dorr because he doesn't know how to pick a name. And so he goes and he starts working on the farm for Mrs. Flitworth, and he's clearly still Death, but like he's doing farm labor and like trying to find purpose in his life and trying to figure out how to be a part of humanity. But meanwhile, because he's not being Death, people are not able to fully die. So we're also following a character named Wendell Poons, who is a wizard, and he thinks he's about to die, but then he can't cross over. So now he's kind of in this zombie-like situation where he's still here, but he shouldn't be. And he isn't sure what he's supposed to do. So he's on this little quest to kind of figure out how to fully die. And he meets all these strange characters, and it's wacky and silly. This was not my favorite of the Discworld books that I've read, and which was a disappointment to me because I thought for sure, like, it's Death, I'm gonna love it. But it wasn't bad. I enjoyed myself. It just wasn't as good as Mort or some of the other Discworld books that I've read. I would say this is on par with like The Color of Magic, which for me was like a 3-star read. I didn't love that one, mostly because I didn't love some of the characters we were stuck with. Like Rincewind is not my favorite. And like I didn't hate Wendell Poons, but I didn't love him. Honestly, his name got stuck in my head, and I would find myself mumbling Wendell Poons a lot. Like I couldn't stop saying the name Wendell Poons in my head, and it got really annoying. And I'm probably going to start up again now because I'm saying it too many times. But anyway, this was like a 3.5. Then the last book that I read this month, I finished literally this morning, and that is I Made It Out of Clay by Beth Kander. I have thoughts. I had to write a review for this because this was an ARC that I got through NetGalley, so I needed to review it. So I did a written review on Goodreads. I'm still processing it, but overall, this was not a book that I enjoyed. And I think part of it is that this is, again, miscategorized. This book is set up to look like a fun Hanukkah rom-com. And that is what I thought I was getting. And it's not that. And like, I can't fully hold it against the book. Like, I don't generally read those kind of stories, so I don't mind when a book is dark, but I thought this was going to be fun. And it was not. This was not a fun book. This is a book about grief and anti-Semitism and building up walls and learning how to pull them back down again. We're following Eve, whose father died a year ago, and she is still like really not done grieving or processing it because she won't talk to anybody. The thing that I really don't like about Eve is that she cut herself off from everyone and then got mad that no one was talking to her or trying to include her in things, but they were. She just was refusing to acknowledge it, which I just found super frustrating the whole book. Like, she has this thing where she mentions at the beginning that she and her father used to like text each other silly things all the time. And so she struggles with like wanting to still do that. So in order to stop herself from doing it, she keeps her phone off all the time. So people are constantly trying to contact her and send her messages and call her and whatever, but her phone's off. And whenever she turns it on, she talks about how many messages she has, how many times her sister's trying to contact her and blah, blah, blah. And she just like ignores them. And then she has the absolute nerve to get mad when she's like, nobody wants to include me in anything. Answer your phone, woman. Like, they're trying. You're just ignoring. And she does that with her friends too. And like, I don't know. I couldn't put up with that. If I had a friend who was just literally ignoring all of my messages and attempts to do things, I think I would give up. Because I feel like, I guess not. But all of that to say, like, she's like shutting herself out of everything because she's still really sad, but she won't talk to the people who are also grieving, her mother and sister. Her little sister's getting married, so she's preparing for this big Hanukkah wedding, and she's supposed to be the maid of honor, but her sister has a real maid of honor, and she's just like the spare maid of honor because she knows how flaky she's being and doesn't want to risk her wedding not going smoothly. So like, she has a best friend that she's really is doing the work of being the maid of honor. And they're like, listen, Eve, if you could just give the toast, can you just give the toast? Can you handle that? So she's supposed to be working on that, which she does not do the entire book. She keeps talking about it and is like, ugh, I'll do it later. Halfway through is when the Golem stuff finally happens, because I was frustrated. I'm like, why am I like 48% of the book through and there's still not a Golem? And I kept trying to figure out like, well, is this character supposed to be like, where's the Golem? She makes this Golem who, she doesn't know how she did it, but she does it. And he's meant to be her date for the wedding. And there's nothing. There's like no romance between her. Like, it's super weird because he doesn't talk. He says like maybe 3 words at a time ever. And mostly it's just, Eve safe. Eve safe. Like, that's like all he says. Coffee. And like, I was so baffled about the relationship that she was supposedly having. It was really weird and kind of uncomfortable at times. And there's also a hot neighbor that she calls Hot Josh because like his name is Josh and he's handsome, that she was kind of like having this weird banter with him. And I like, is that going to be the Golem? Is he a Golem? Like, what's happening? Anyway, I found this book really weird, did not love it, gave it like 3.5 stars. It did have some interesting things to say, but as far as Golem books go, this was not one that I enjoyed that much. And I didn't have a good time with it. I don't know. I was glad to be done with it. So, I don't know. I wanted it to be a fun, like, he's supposed to look like Paul Rudd. She calls him Paul Mudd. I don't know. I didn't really know what I was supposed to be feeling half the time because it was really weird and dark and sad, and like every now and then there'd be something that was supposed to be funny and I was like, should I be laughing? I don't know. It feels weird. It felt weird. Anywho, I'm looking forward to my December reading because I'm almost done with the Sibyls. I have a few more things I need to get through for that, and then I can kind of just like read for fun. I don't have any big plans for anything. I just need to finish my reading challenge so I can wrap that up. I need to see what I have on my shelves that has been speaking to me the most this year and try to squeeze those in, but like otherwise it's going to be a laid back month, so looking forward to that. Let me know in the comments what was something that you really enjoyed reading this month. If I have to pick a favorite, oh gosh, what was my favorite book this month? I think if I have to pick a favorite book of November, it's going to be 11/22/63. That was like by far the most exciting, interesting thing I read, followed very closely by Black River Orchard. So those are like my two favorite books of the month. So let me know down below in the comments what was something that you read this month that you really loved. I'd love to hear about it. And I will see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye.